Hey guys, I'm Brittany from Quarter-Acre Roots, where we talk about growing a lot in a little bit of space. And today we are talking about how to apply permaculture design principles to your smaller suburban space. To do that, I'm going to be sharing my permaculture design certification project, my final project that I did after going through all of the training and getting permaculture design certified. Just as a quick disclaimer up top, my goal for doing this was not to institute like pure permaculture principles into our yard because it's just not possible where we're at. We are on a quarter acre total in suburbia. So that quarter acre includes our home, it includes our driveway, it includes the front yard, the side yard, all of that. So it obviously was not realistic for me to do a pure permaculture design on our property. So with that in mind, let's get started and jump right in. We're gonna start with our goals. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a site description, and then we're going to walk through each of the numbered elements of my little project that I put together. Our main goal for designing our yard was to minimize traditional turf grass lawns and to maximize plantable or otherwise productive space to help feed us, our local community, and our local ecosystem. We also had a goal of incorporating some renewable technologies to decrease our reliance on the traditional power grid and water sources. We are located in Western Maryland, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Grow Zone 7A. And again, our lot is a total of about 1/4 acre or about 12,000 square feet. And that's also about 1,100 square meters, give or take. Our lot is largely flat. We do have a very slight but pretty much imperceptible slope to the west, so we are not really incorporating any like swale approaches into our design of our yard just because it is largely just a big flat lot, which honestly was one of the things that was really appealing to us when we looked at this house. And finally, addressing some constraints. Obviously, we live in suburbia. We do have local town codes. We have county restrictions and regulations we have to follow. And then we are also very close to our neighbors on either side. So we're taking some of those constraints into consideration when we are implementing some of these permaculture design principles. To get started with our design, I used our drone. We have like a small little hobby drone. I used that to take this picture of our piece of property. And then instead of sketching things out by hand, because I knew I would get frustrated like moving things around and erasing things and whatnot, I decided to upload this image to Canva and then overlay things on top of it so that when I was done overlaying everything and planning it out, I could just delete the image on the bottom to get this image, which is my final plan that we are going to walk through. So obviously, if you don't have a drone, that's no big deal. You can use Google Maps to measure your property. You just go to like the measuring tool. I use that to get all of the dimensions for our property. You can use that to set up a canvas if you want to use something like Canva, or you can just use that to come up with like your design plan on paper. This was just the easiest way for me to get it from my head onto an actual plan and not have to stress about like measurements or anything like that. The first thing to do is to look at your zones. So in general, in permaculture, you're going to be establishing zones within your property. Now, you may not have all zones. We do not have all zones where we live because again, we do not have a large piece of property. Zone 0 is going to be where you start because that is your dwelling. Our primary dwelling, that is zone 0. Outside of that, zone 1 is like your frequently visited areas. I've seen it called like the kitchen garden. So that's going to be like our patio, our raised beds, our small ponds. And then we have zone 2, which is more like less visited, less intensely cultivated areas, but you're still growing foods. So we only have those zones. There are other zones. They go up to, I think, zone 5. And zone 5 is like forest or like a totally unmanaged wilderness zone. That would be awesome to have, but we don't have that. So we're only looking at zones 0, 1, and 2 in our map. So starting off with number 1 on here, this is our primary dwelling. We have a single story house and we have a pretty traditional American home in terms of like insulation, energy efficiency. It is an older home. So one of the things that we would like to do is do some sort of energy audit in the future to figure out where the areas are that we can improve our use of traditional HVAC systems and things like that. But we've done all the basic stuff of like replacing light bulbs. We installed a high efficiency wood pellet stove insert into our old traditional fireplace that was just an open, unfunctional fireplace, which we absolutely love. Super clean burning, super efficient, and we can take the ashes and put them in the compost. So we love that. The second area here is right off the house. This is our patio and sheltered area. So this is pretty much some of the only meaningful shade we have in the yard because we don't have a ton of mature trees. We have a gazebo here, and we also put a solar panel up in this area so that we could run power to this without using traditional small plug-in power. We did not have an easily accessible plug here, so my husband put up a solar panel that powers some lights and a small hanging ceiling fan underneath of the gazebo, which is super awesome. We also just have a sitting area here to eat because this is a family home, and we plan to move our worm composting, vermicomposting tiered hut out here to live in the shade over the spring, summer, and fall. Right now it's in the basement because it's super cold outside, but that needs to be in a somewhat protected area, so we will have that under here. This area also has our first rain barrel. So we have a large, I think it's 200-gallon capacity rain bladder to catch water coming off the back of the house in this area, and then we can use that to fill up the pond, which we'll discuss in a little bit. We can use that to water plants, and it's just a nice way to capture that water coming off the back of the house. The third and fourth areas are our intensive gardening spaces. So 3 is all raised beds. The green areas are raised beds, and 4 is in-ground beds. The green lines are the plantable spaces. The brown areas in here are all mulched paths, and we have those areas planted as well, but I just wanted to differentiate between all of the different beds and the plantable space. We have installed drip irrigation in all of these areas to help conserve our water use. Honestly, drip irrigation is something that everyone should consider. Our water bills have been insane the last few summers here. Drip irrigation is going to help you conserve a lot of your water use, and it's also going to get that water exactly where it needs to go with the plants, which is to the roots and not covering all of the foliage. You can also put it on timers, which is great because that helps to automate things so you don't have to worry about remembering to get out and water at the right time of day. Number 5 is a 6-foot by 9-foot hobby greenhouse that we installed from the brand Backyard Discovery. I researched a bunch of different greenhouses before I decided on this one. This one is really the perfect size for our yard, and I really like how in our smaller space, it looks really nice too. So we use this for expanding our growing season. We also use it for off-season storage, and it really is incredible how hot this greenhouse gets even when it's like 30 degrees outside. If it's even remotely sunny, it heats up really, really well. So this has been like a definite game changer in allowing us to start things earlier and to expand our space. When you're designing your yard with permaculture principles in mind, you want to be thinking about what the different outputs of your elements are in your design. So when you're thinking about putting something in your yard, you want to have as many outputs as possible. So an output of the greenhouse is obviously that we can extend our growing season and we can grow plants in it. Another output might be that we can then sell those plants to help defray the cost that we are spending on our own yard because we have a little bit more space. And another output is that we mounted gutters on the back of this greenhouse. So we have 2 more rain barrels on the back of the greenhouse that captures rainwater that comes down. It's also a structure, right? So we're going to be growing vines up the back of the greenhouse this year to help with that heat in the super, super hot parts of the summer because it becomes really unbearable to be in that greenhouse when it gets really, really hot here in Maryland. So we are going to be growing some annual vines up the back of that. They're going to be nitrogen fixers, so they're going to help improve the soil, they're going to provide some shade, and they're going to look really pretty. So a greenhouse isn't just for growing plants, it's for a number of different things, and that's something that you should definitely keep in mind when you are coming up with designs for your yard. We did have a poured concrete patio put in right where the greenhouse is. I just thought that would be easier and cleaner. So since that is an impervious surface, we use this largely as like our work area because we don't have a garage. We don't have like a ton of shaded area in the backyard. I also have a lot of container plants on here. I have our hose mounted here for easy access everywhere in the yard if I'm not using the drip irrigation. And I also have a bunch of vertical Greenstalk planters here. I love Greenstalks. You can grow a ton of plants vertically in only 2 square feet of space. So this is really a great idea for maximizing impervious surfaces in smaller spaces or to have them like up on a patio close to a house for herbs and stuff like that. Love, love, love my Greenstalks. I'm up to 3. I'm doing one completely full of strawberries this year. I'm doing a bunch of medicinal herbs in another one. And then my third one, I'm just going to use for all of my extra plant starts that will fit in the tiers that I don't know what to do with because I always start way too many seeds. Next up, number 6 is our driveway. It's super extra long because a couple owners before us had an RV, so they had an RV pad poured. So obviously we can't plant in this space, but we try to maximize it by using a bunch of container gardens here. I also have an elevated bed on wheels in this area because it does get great light. There is a strip right along the fence that also gets great light, and since we are in such a small space, we are not letting that space go to waste. We moved all of the rocks out of there, improved the soil there, and we now have various things planted there. I have a couple sun artichokes in there because they're super hardy and I don't want to have to water this area. We have a couple other like annual flowers planted here. We're still working on this space and figuring out what's going to be here long term, but that area kind of moves into our Hugelculture-style bed. This is not a strictly traditional Hugelculture-style bed, but we created what is essentially a hill garden with a couple different layers. After we had dug out our pond and had a bunch of dirt that we didn't know what to do with, we had a bunch of old tree limbs that we didn't know what to do with. So we made this mound here implementing that layered approach to a Hugelculture-style bed. And this has been a really productive area so far. This is our second year with it. We've grown a couple different trailing things on here, but I ended up adding 2 blackberry bushes here and I have an elderberry shrub here. On the bottom, we're probably going to add a bunch of herbs like creeping thyme, mostly perennial herbs to serve as ground covers. So if you dig something up and you don't know what to do with all the dirt, make a hill garden. Jumping to number 8, the pond. I love our pond. Our first pond we put in a couple years ago, and everyone told us, if you think your pond's gonna be big enough and you have the space to go bigger, definitely go bigger the first time. And we did not listen to them. We did not listen. We just went to Lowe's and we got like that stock hardscape pond liner that a lot of people get. You can buy them in stores. And if that's all you have room for, that's great. We loved our pond. But we eventually decided last fall to take that out and pretty much triple the size of our pond and use a softscape tarp style liner instead. And our goal was just 1, to make it bigger so that we can hold more water in it, but 2, to create more of like a wildlife vibe. We weren't really noticing like anyone moving into our ponds and birds weren't really using it a ton. So now the way we have it designed, there's like a more shallow end that birds can sit in and drink and play around in the water. I love watching it. It's so cute. And then we also have more room for growing water loving plants, either in the shallow end of the pond, and then the deeper end, of course, we've got our fish. It's not big enough to like have fish to cultivate and eat. The filter we have on the pond also has a feature where I can like kick out some of that pond scum to put in buckets to water my plants, which I always do because that's one of the best things for plants, that delicious fish poop pond scum. So it's a great source of free fertilizer for our plants as well. Right by the pond and patio, we have our northwest fence bed. This has a bunch of native plants in it. It has some privacy shrubs. This is still a work in progress since we did have to dig up the pond last year to make it bigger. So the whole area needs like replanted and re-landscaped. But I have lots of really nice things around here, lots of native shrubs, lots of nitrogen fixers, lots of pollinator plants. So I would just recommend that you look into what the native plants are in your area and what sorts of edible things you can put around things like a pond, especially if you have the type of pond that's like actually going to wet the soil like around your pond. So ours, when it overflows, it does overflow into that shallow area now. This was not something that could happen with the hardscape liner we had before. So I like having that now because I put a lot of like rain garden-y type plants around where the pond overflows when it gets super full. I always recommend going native, especially for like your pollinator plants, because those are going to be your most drought tolerant plants and they are going to be your easiest, like plant it and pretty much forget about it, except for doing some separating and some digging up and some maybe pruning maintenance every year or so. Number 10 is probably the first thing we did when we moved into the house. My husband put in a fire pit here. We love cooking hot dogs over the fire. It's just a really nice feature to have in the backyard. And I also use it to burn diseased plant waste. So like if I have a plant that's got problems and I don't want to be like composting the pieces or putting them in my yard waste bin for our local town to pick up, I can burn them in the fire to make sure they are dead and gone. This also has a solar powered blower in it. It runs underground from a solar panel that my husband put in that powers a blower underground to essentially like really decrease the amount of smoke that the fire makes and to get it like burning quickly to an inferno style fire. So it's super efficient burning fireplace. I love it. It's like attached to a little remote. Definitely not the kind of thing that I would put in, but my husband loves a good engineering project like that. So he put that in a couple years ago and we have been enjoying it since. Oh, and speaking of that solar panel, back to the raised garden area and the in-ground garden area, I forgot to mention we have a bunch of rain barrels off that side as well. Some of those rain barrels do power a DIY solar powered irrigation system in 2 of the beds. Now, I do want to make a note about this. So you will find differing opinions on whether or not you should be using water from your roof to water your plants. So my personal take is you have to know your own risk tolerance and you have to know what your roof is made out of. So we have an asphalt shingle roof and it is not a super new roof. So we feel comfortable using the water from our roof and our rain barrels to water plants that aren't like edible tubers or things like that. So we will use them to water things at the base level and not get it like on the foliage or anything. We also use it to water perennials around the yard that we need to get established, and just for things like filling up our pond, which then that water will get filtered out and cleaned anyway. So you need to understand what your roof is made out of, potential contaminants that could be coming off of that roof. There are lots of different variables that go into what you use your harvested rainwater for, but we do not drink or consume any of our rainwater. That's a whole nother rabbit hole you could go down in terms of like harvesting rainwater and filtering it. That kind of operation is not something that our backyard is really set up for. I would love to go down that rabbit hole one day, but it's just really not for us right now. Number 11 on the map is a chicken coop. We do not have a chicken coop. We do not have chickens. It's not something that we have really felt comfortable investing in and researching at this point. It's something that I would love to add in the future. I would love to have the form of natural pest control. I would love to have a source of eggs. I would love to have something to provide free manure and fertilizer for my garden. We want to do a lot more research and kind of get things in place before we pulled in living beings that we have to responsibly care for. I'm envisioning like something that's a little bit more mobile so we can move it around to different areas of the yard. Obviously some sort of run too. Like I like the idea of having a run that runs around a berry patch or a vegetable garden so that they could eat up grubs and do pest control without like actually getting in and tearing up the garden, because chickens can really do a number on your garden. There are so many things to think about when you are bringing another living being into your setup. So it's just not something we've moved toward yet, but I would love to in the future. 12 and 13 I'll cover together. 12 is our berry patch. We've been working on sheet mulching this turf grass area and putting in different berry bushes. Right now we have some blueberries that have been in there for several years. Last year we added some red raspberries and some golden raspberries. What else do I have here? I have gooseberries in here. I think that's pretty much it in terms of berries. We have some paths around all of these berries. This is an area we're still working on. I need to finish sheet mulching this. And then I also want to think about some way to maybe like fence this off with posts so that I can put up some sort of like, not necessarily a shade cloth, but something to prevent birds from swooping down in there. Something I just need to think through this year. And then that area goes seamlessly into our mini orchard area in the very back of our property that has our dwarf fruit trees. It has some native trees. And then these are the areas of the guilds that I'm going to be building out. So back here we have 1 peach tree, 2 plum trees, 1 persimmon tree, and 2 pawpaw trees. We also have a redbud tree and a dogwood, which are just beautiful flowering trees in our area. And redbuds are really fast growing, so I kind of wanted that to be my center medium-sized shade tree that we have all of these planted around. I've also got 3 columnar apple trees coming actually this week, which I'm very excited about. They are something I've never grown before. They stay relatively small, between like 8 to 10 feet tall, and also they're very narrow. So you can plant them like 2 to 3 feet apart. So I got 3 of them to plant in kind of a triangle. I've traditionally not really wanted to do apple trees just because I didn't want to deal with all the pests, but I am very excited about how small and manageable these stay, and I'm hoping that that's a good choice for our smaller space. A big part of permaculture design is thinking through essentially how to like automate things. So when you're thinking of planting your fruit trees, you want to be planting things around them to maximize that space. So for example, I have a persimmon tree, and then below the persimmon tree around it, I've got some perennial creeping thyme planted. I've got some comfrey planted, which has a very deep taproot. It's also great for a green living mulch because it spreads pretty prolifically. You can chop down those greens and just compost them in place. I've also got some coneflowers and some miniature goldenrod, which are excellent pollinator friendly plants. And then I'm going to be planting a lot more nitrogen fixers in this area this spring. Nitrogen is an essential element to plant production. So it is quickly depleted in the soils. So the idea with planting nitrogen fixers is that you are replenishing the nitrogen fixers with your plants. You're not having to like go out and buy fertilizers and constantly apply them. Once the plants that you have that are nitrogen fixers complete their life cycle, they are replenishing the nitrogen in that soil for you. So it's just something else that you're kind of putting on autopilot in your garden. Areas 14 and 15 are where we have our compost bins, our large compost bins. bins. I forgot to mention we do have another compost bin up behind the greenhouse right next to the rain barrels. That's more for like kitchen scraps and things like that. The bins we have back here are more for making our own leaf compost, so putting leaves in there. Because of where we live, we have some neighborhoods around us that are required to bag up their leaves on yard waste days, so I like to go and pick up all those leaves and put them in our bins and make our own leaf compost. I'm a big advocate of leaving the leaves in place, but I also can't change all of the local restrictions in my neighborhoods. So if people are going to be required to bag up those leaves and put them out, I'm going to take them and put them in our yard waste bins to make my own leaf compost. And then the sheds, obviously just for storage. We have things out here like birdhouses and a large bat house. We had a big bat problem in our attic when we first moved in. The bats even got into our basement once, which was not fun, did not like that. So we put a bat house out here because we want the bats, but we don't want them in our house. So we put a nice bat house out here on like a telescoping pole. And then I'd like to add another rain barrel out here because that is a surface that we can capture water from. Long term, it would be awesome if we could do some sort of like workshop garage out here. We're kind of eyeing that as maybe something to do in the future. We don't have a garage and we definitely don't have room to add a garage on our house. So something to think through in the future, how we could make that a multi-use space as well. That brings us to number 16, which is our front garden. This was our big project we did last year. I have a video on here all about how we converted our traditional turf grass lawn to beautiful gardens. I think beautiful gardens and more productive gardens. So up here we have lots of amazing plants, some things that still need to go in. We have 2 hardy almond trees. We have a bunch of currant bushes because this area gets morning sun and then some afternoon shade. So perfect for those currants that don't like to be scorched by super hot afternoon sun. And up here we also have blackberries. I'll link this whole video below if you guys are interested in the process. Essentially what we did was put in some paths, threw a bunch of manure on the grass, and then sheet mulched with cardboard and paper bags and traditional just shredded hardwood mulch to kill off that grass. I was amazed at how well this did the first year. It did so well. I put all my extra vegetable starts up here. And the reason why we didn't convert like our entire front lawn into gardens is because, again, we're very close with our neighbors and there's no like natural cut point from our yard to theirs. It's just one kind of lawn blob. So we put up the little retaining wall, one because there's just an ever slight slope down away from the house, and then also because it gives us a firm start and stop period where it looks more intentional, and we're just trying to design with our neighbors in mind too, which is definitely something that I think you should keep in mind if you are in more of a suburban neighborhood with restrictions and you want to stay on good terms with your neighbors. And then the side gets great light. This is an area where we're going to be putting a couple things as well. Right now we have some raspberry bushes over here. I have lots of like early spring bulbing flowers that I like for cut flowers. But this area, even though it's like not the sunniest in the morning, it gets a lot of sun in the afternoon. So the previous owner had hostas here and the hostas were just getting totally fried with the sun in the afternoon. We have just kind of been trying to figure out what's put here. I think I threw like a random blueberry bush that I got on clearance over here. I need to give this some more intentional thought, but it's going to be something productive. Because again, when you live in the size space that we have, you have to think about how to make every single area of your house productive, even if it's just like a very small area. You don't want it to go to waste. And then number 18, our last element here is our southeast side garden. So this might get the best light in the entire yard because it gets that morning sun all the way through very early evening in the summer. Right now, there isn't much plantable space here because we do have the driveway, boohoo, but I have a passionflower vine here. So the reason why I put the passionflower vine here is if you've ever grown passionflower, you know that they are extremely aggressive spreaders. So it's a good idea to put them in areas where they might be a little bit more contained. So I planted it in an area that has a driveway on one side, sidewalks on the other, house, basically areas that prevent it from spreading too much. Now these plants will like throw out runners and go under driveways and stuff like that. So keep that in mind when you're planting a passionflower vine, but this was the best place we could plant it to keep it relatively contained, but also put it in the ground and let it flourish and be very beautiful. I also have a boysenberry shrub planted here that just went in this year. So again, really maximizing that space with something that is edible and productive. There is a medium-sized Japanese maple here that I have not had the heart to pull out. The previous owner put it in. I don't dislike Japanese maples, but it doesn't seem to be very happy with how much sun it's getting in this area. And I just feel like it's a prime sunspot to put something else in, but I'm not committed to removing the Japanese maple until I have a plan for what I want to put there. And I also know that I feel bad removing the Japanese maple because I know that people love Japanese maples. But if I don't love Japanese maples and it's not happy, then what's the point? I don't know if it's too big to dig up or what. But again, that's like future Brittany's problem. So that about wraps up our entire permaculture design yard project plan. Again, this is not pure permaculture design, and I am sure I missed a lot of stuff. Like, I know if I might get a comment, but like, what about this thing? Well, I thought about that in the design, and either this is why it wasn't included, or this is why I included it and I forgot to mention it. I hope that if you are looking to institute some permaculture practices in your yard to incorporate some of these permaculture best practices and ideas, that you found this helpful if you're in a smaller space, because I truly do believe that like there are lots of great philosophies behind permaculture. I'm not a permaculture purist, obviously. I am a big believer in looking at different things and picking and choosing what works best for you, what matches your beliefs, what matches your space, what matches what you can keep up with in your yard. And a lot of the things in permaculture that I have been able to incorporate here, I think I was a little bit surprised with how much I was able to incorporate into our little space. And I think that it's only going to get better going forward, because as things grow and as spaces mature, we will probably decide to make changes, maybe incorporate some more things, maybe get a little braver and put in that chicken coop eventually. But until then, we are really happy with the progress our yard has made. It started off as just a giant flat, grassy area, and we have already done so much work to improve this area. Everything that you see in this yard, we have done. When I say that there were no gardens, there was nothing. It was just all grass. So we've already made a lot of progress that we're really proud of, and we are looking forward to making even more. So if you guys have any questions about this project, about our yard and how we have implemented things in our quarter-acre suburban yard, please let me know. And in the meantime, happy planting.